Hello, I'm Richard Raffan and this is my wood lathe. Now this video is really for people who don't know the names of the parts or who are looking to buy their first lathe. I'll just take you through this, which is about as good a lathe, small lathe as you can get, and would be a terrific one to start with. So a lathe consists of a bed, sometimes known as the ways, a headstock, which is the drive end, that's where the power comes from. There's a motor in underneath. And then we have a tailstock, which is movable up and down the lathe bed. And then we have a tool rest on which you put the tools before we're going to turn any wood. And this can be locked in any position and the top spins around. So we'll just have a closer look at all these components. So we'll start with the headstock. Now the lathe will arrive looking like this. This is a spur drive which you use to transmit the power from here through to the through generally to long thin spindles, long bits of work. Now this is a faceplate which unscrews. And this is what you attach bits of wood to with 4 screws. There are other ways of doing that, but this is the most basic way. Now we have this. This is called a spindle, a drive spindle, and inside here, which I can't show you easily because of the lathe is fixed where it is, but there's a set of pulleys inside this headstock. This is called a hand wheel on the outside, which not all lathes have, but is very useful. Because if you've got anything on this side, then you can rotate the piece by hand and have a look at it. Coming around the back of the lathe, we have what's known as the spindle lock, and that means they can twist that round, and that means you can't move the spindle. And it's actually meant for other things too. It's a divided head, which means that you can do specialist kind of work, doing patterns and things on wood. But basically it locks the spindle, and that makes it easier to get a chuck or a faceplate on or off the lathe. Below the spindle lock and the hand wheel on this lathe we come down to the motor, and so basically this one has 3 speeds, which is very nice, but I actually keep it on the middle one, and that's fine for what I do. And then round the front we have the on and off switches, and this is a variable speed lathe, which is quite common these days. So the top switch here, you dial up the speed, and this one is almost 0, and then you can wind it up to about 2000 RPM in this case. At the other end of the lathe bed we have the tail center, which can move up and down, and you can lock it in position anywhere. Now this bit, which is a conical center, and it's a revolving tail center, this can be removed, and this is a knockout bar which works through the hollow spindle here. So there are a range of tail centers you can use, and this winds in and out, so you've got a little more kind of leeway when you come to set it all up. This little top lever is to lock the spindle in position. So you've got the basic lock down here to lock the whole assembly. And then you've got what's called the quill coming out, and that will obviously go in and out. I think on this one up to about 2 inches, I know a bit longer than that, 2 1/4, 60 millimeters. So that's the 2 ends. This is the other end which supports wood between centers. So if you want to turn a small log, that goes against the drive center, 4 spur drive. It's got 4 spikes on it, little spike in the middle, and this comes up tightens that, and away you go. But you do need a tool rest, and that slides in here. So we'll now have a closer look at the tool rest. So the tool rest consists of a banjo, which is the kind of base, which has a cam action on it here, and that locks in place. On some older lathe you'll find there's a nut there, and you'll tighten that with a wrench. A little more inconvenient, but if the lathe is good and solid and all cast iron, well worth a look. Then you have rests. Now this lathe comes with two basic rests, one which is about 6 inches, one which is 12, and that you can adjust in height and then lock with this lever here, and that often comes with kind of ratchet thing, so you can leave that set at different angles. So that can just move around on the rest and be locked wherever you need it, at a height you need it. And that is the longer rest. And you can get a whole range of those. Now another very nice thing to have on a rest is a hardened top. And this has a rod of hardened steel, and that saves you having to file a rest which is not of hardened steel to keep it smooth. This one just doesn't need attention, or hardly any attention. So if you're in the market for a lathe, what you're looking for is something which is made of cast iron, preferably like this rather than a couple of rods. Some of the older lathes have rods, some even aluminium. If you can lift a lathe that size easily, unless you're particularly strong, it's probably not worth having. You really can't have a lathe heavy enough or overbuilt enough. And then the lathe itself needs to be on a good sturdy bench. You don't want the thing rattling around. When you're checking out a lathe, it pays to slide the tailstock up to a spur drive and just make sure the 2 points are in alignment, spike to spike. And I think that's about it.